HFC letter of employment. HFC letter of employment. Member HSBC Group to David McNerney from Art Kozad, December 27th, 2004. As the insurance sales manager for the HFC California division, I would like to welcome you, HSBC, HFC. I think that you needed two there. I trust that your first few weeks of training are going well. As you have learned in your training, credit protection on our loan products is a critical part of our business. Offering optional protection plans to our customers adds terrific value, valuable protection, and peace of mind at a reasonable price. By now, you should have already submitted your application to our licensing department for your motor club license. This will allow you to offer the auto portion of our home and auto security plan. Until then, you are able to offer and sell all of our other credit protections, unemployment, disability, and life, including the home portion of the home and auto security plan. If you have any questions, your BSM or training manager will be able to guide you through the licensing process, and I'm available as well. Again, welcome to the team, and I look forward to working with you in the coming months. Art Kozad, HFC, California, Insurance Sales Manager. Located in Pomona. So let's see, to this point, we've done Proud Pops, birth certificate, first sales call, 6th grade, Randall's yearbook signing, high school wrestler, the third estate, Army driver's license, military jacket. So, I am 22 now. I got out of the Army and smoked weed for the first time. That was the first thing I did. We went to Big Sur. My friend picked me up. We drove down the California one. Always liked nature. So we went, we smoked, we hung out, went home, and got a job because the Army was my first real job, and I was an adult, so I had to start making money. The Army puts a roof over your head and feeds you. So I was living at home. I applied at Papa John's. I always wanted to be a pizza delivery driver. I love pizza. I love driving. That was actually interesting because I got to get to know my town, because I lived, by then my folks had bought a house. No, they were renting a house. Afterwards they bought a house. So by then we were renting a house, but, well, they were. And then I came back to live with them. So they moved out of that apartment complex and those other apartment complexes. And then we were in another house as we were going down Mountain View, across the tracks, into the worse and worse neighborhoods. And then their business started picking up. They had their own insurance agency by then, stopped working for other people, and they moved down the street from Cope Middle School, my middle school. I was already in the Army at this time, but yeah, it was in that nicer part of Redlands. So we moved out of Loma Linda to Redlands, to the south side. It's funny, most neighborhoods, I guess, as you go up in elevation, or most cities, as you go up in elevation, the nicer houses are on the hill. So we started going up the hill. We rented that house. I think it was around $2,000 or something. It was a nice house. It was like a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, big backyard. So I got out of the Army 2002. 2 years out of a 5-year enlistment. I signed up for military intelligence, 5 years. It's such a long enlistment because infantry is only 2 years. The grunt work are only like 2 years. They're hard jobs, are hard MOSs. Military intelligence was a little bit more cush. We're like in offices a lot of the time. We got that top secret clearance. Our training alone was a year and a half. It was a year of language school, and then half a year for it to learn how to use the equipment or whatever your actual job was. So most of the military intelligence was 4, 5, 6 year enlistments, I think. Mine was 5. So I got out of that in 2. Oh, I should speak on that. So when I was still in the military, I was on my way out. I went before the commander, and I kind of like made a case for me getting chaptered out. I'm just a fuck up. I keep messing up, and then they agreed with me and they let me out. If I had gone the opposite route and said, you know what, I'm going to try really hard, and you got more character references and showed some sort of direction as far as what I wanted to do, I probably couldn't stay in my MOS because I failed out of language school. I might not even have been able to stay in military intelligence, but there's other stuff I was thinking about doing. I thought, all right, if I stay in the military, what could I possibly do in the military that I would enjoy? Thinking that, you know, I probably messed up the military intelligence route because I've already paid for so much of my training. I figured I did have a chance of staying in, and I had some good character references, people that I worked with who respected me. Maybe not my teachers or my immediate chain, but other people I'd met while I was in. I knew other people who had failed out of school but transferred into decent other careers, people who were applying for like special forces programs and stuff. So I knew you could do it. You could once you're in the military, you realize that you can transition out. You don't have to stick on your course that you signed up for. You can get in and then figure out, oh my gosh, I just discovered about this career path, and then there's ways to like transition out. You just need people on your side to help you do that. And I had a couple people left on my side. I hadn't burned all my bridges. So I looked it up, and I wanted to be an Army diver. So I looked that up. I always liked the water. I swam since I was young. In that apartment complex where I grew up running around with all the kids being crazy, we had a bunch of pools. And so our thing is like every day we'd be at the pool swimming, and we loved the ocean. My dad's from the beach. We didn't live at the beach, but we lived 60 minutes away, and we'd go visit family, and we'd go to the beach with friends whenever we could. So since I was like 5, I was jumping in the waves. So I thought Army diver. I looked that up. It's a very small MOS. Only like a third make it through the initial training. So it sounded really hard, physically demanding. I was always good at physical stuff. I love swimming. But then you need a good vision. And you can tell from these glasses, I don't have good vision. These are actually, they don't look as bad as they are, but these are really thin lenses because they're special lenses, but they should be like that thick. Not Coke bottle thick, but it's like 0.45 and 0.55 or something, pretty bad. So I would have to get LASIK surgery, and I looked that up, and I guess I could have done that and then gotten into the MOS, but it seemed too many steps. I didn't have the time, or like maybe the inclination, but that's what I was thinking before I got out. You know, maybe I could be an Army diver, and that would have transitioned well for the outside. They make good money when they get out. Underwater welders and stuff. You go like work on oil rigs and everything. Get to travel around the world. So I've always, it looks like I'm bouncing around, but I did pause, and like before I went in the Army, I didn't know about that testing into college, or else I might have considered that. But I thought, all right, what should I do? And then I decided. So I got out, again, smoked weed, went home. What am I gonna do? Decided my options. Got that pizza delivery job, get to check around my town. Now I'm living in a nicer house in a nicer area. Delivery's interesting because you gotta you deliver everywhere. So I went down streets. I didn't really go to high school parties, maybe a couple. Wasn't in my scene. I wasn't, I was like trying to be a good kid. I didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't do anything in high school. Pretty much didn't even curse. And so until I got in the Army, then I learned how to do all that stuff. And then so delivering pizza and going to these fancy houses, these neighborhoods I never really hung out in and stuff was interesting. I got to see like the whole picture of my town, like not just like the sections of friends. I had friends in nice areas. Never really hung out with people in the nice areas. Like I hung out with like maybe middle class, upper middle class. I didn't go to like the fancy houses. So pizza delivery, kind of like doing that for about a year, gave me the whole lay of the land. I mean, I drove, and I did, when you have a car, you kind of drive through the nice parts of town. You just look at the houses, and you just like look at how other people live. But I mean, even just knocking on their door, delivering pizza was interesting. I like that. Again, I guess that's what the connecting path of all this has been. I'm curious, and I try to look through doors and see what's going on. Not necessarily to be a part of that tribe, but just to check out what that tribe's all about. And it's cool when you have these jobs, I guess. Real estate later on was like that. You look at people's financials and you're like, oh, okay, this is how these people live, or this is what it takes to live in Manhattan. You need these types of financials. I always wonder when people say, that's interesting, because it's like a placeholder for assumed something or another. But so we're trying to get to HFC. HFC. So I did that, went to community college. There's a lot of ground to cover. I left all, because there's so much stuff that happens. Because I got out in 2002, tried to go to community college, and was working that pizza job, living at home. Then I got an apartment with some friends. That didn't work out. Of course, I'm not destined to be a pizza delivery driver all my life, so I got bored with that. Trying to fight with my manager or something. We'd hang out, we'd smoke. I'm smoking weed by now, so we were very casual. But then you try to tell me what to do, and if you're too casual, then sometimes that doesn't work out. Georgi Chantoria was from Georgia, part of that political family over there. If you look up Chantoria, the last name, the good people, and he was a good guy. I was kind of in the wrong in my insubordination. That's another trend, me having trouble with authority, which I say as an adult, it's just my entrepreneurial spirit. As long as you're not a jackass about it. If you don't like following orders, then get in a position where you can make your own orders. So I do that, do the community college, drop out of that because, I didn't like high school, I didn't like army school. Why would I like community college? Didn't identify with the students. Another thing, when I got out of the military, it was hard for me to identify with people on the normal track because I'd already done so much in the military, just going through. If you look at the military jacket, I had like my commanders against me, I had so many counselings. Everyone was telling me my counseling jacket, my military jacket was thicker than they'd seen before, all the people in the office. So when I got out, I go back to college, it's like I've already been through a lot of shit. Like, not like combat shit, but just like a lot of people like talking about you, a lot of like when you're standing in front of the colonel of a base and you're talking about whether your character is fit to stay in America's Armed Service, it's a level of gravitas. It's like being not suspended from high school, but like going before like the dean of a college and getting kicked out of college. It's you have this authority in this huge institution, and it's a military. And like colonel, I mean, even if you care about the military, if you don't, it's a high-ranking officer, and you're in a room with a lot of other high-ranking officers, so it's a little bit intimidating. So when I'm in school, I'm like, I just don't take stuff that seriously. But I needed a job, and I knew I needed a job better than pizza delivery. So then I went to Berkeley for a little bit. I had a friend going to Berkeley, drawing on some high school connections. And so I skipped up to Berkeley, got a job for the East Bay Express, working for their advertising. So I had my insurance license from helping out my folks. I did get my insurance license with my folks, and they had their agency. I'd work with them for a little bit just to know the business. In case something happens, I want to know that I can plug into the business, but I didn't want to stay there full time to work with them. But I just enough to know what they're doing and help out a little bit, and then I would take off, have my adventures. A lot of wanderlust, a lot of like experienced, hungry youth, trying to just travel a little bit. So it's like, let's live in Berkeley a little bit. Worked for the East Bay Express, left there after like a couple months. Didn't really like that corporate vibe. They'd just gotten bought out by this other group who bought out the Village Voice. So at the same time, all these weekly newspapers, which is a part of media consolidation around the United States, all these independent weekly newspapers were being bought out. Village Voice was, and then now the East Bay Express, which was another one that was like a generation of independence. And then as soon as they came in, they gutted the journalism side. And so I just kind of like, I've always been sensitive to the culture. One of the things that bugged me about the military is there were some people I respected, but some people I didn't. And it was like, it's a lot of BS. And who am I to criticize the military, especially as just like a little PV 2 or 3 or whatever. But yeah, just my intuition said that this isn't for me. I don't like these people. Again, not all of them, but just some of the stuff I saw. And then, well, you know what it was? It was that George Bush, when we have our chain of command in every like installation or in your barracks, you have, while you walk in the main hall, you have your chain of command, and it goes your sergeants, and then your commander, and then the base commander, and then on up to the command sergeant major of the army and the president. And everyone's picture is right there, so you got like 20, 30 pictures right there in your hallway. And just seeing George Bush's face in high school, having that underground newspaper and having so little respect for this man. I didn't even vote. I've never voted in my life, never respected any politicians on the ballot. I'm sure if I looked into it, there'd be local guys I liked. But the whole thing seems like such a scam from the beginning. I'd rather, and this is just intuitive, non-participation is the best form of protest. There's I think Einstein quote to that effect, but you don't want to participate in violent systems. And the whole thing just kind of reeked. So when I was in the military, every time I'd come into that barracks and I'd see that George W. Bush, and we know he's like a draft dodger, and he's like, at that time, I wasn't reading any radical politics. So when I got out and I went and did the pizza delivery, I started reading books about politics and started figuring out real history. And then when I would like read about like CIA overthrowing a country for like some corporate profit or something, it would be cognitive dissonance. You have to like stop. And a lot of books I read, especially back then, you actually have to stop because it's a lot of stuff coming up, emotions. And then now later on in life, I'm trying to figure out what's the connection between emotions and your rational brain, which actually is a science right now going on, is how does your brain develop thoughts, and like what is the control mechanisms for like the interface between like your conscious and your subconscious, and how do psychedelics affect that and stuff like that. Michael Pollan just came out with a book recently about stuff like that, and there's some recent like science stuff. I won't speak on too much stuff I don't know, but I know that when you read stuff that challenges your assumptions, strongly held assumptions or beliefs that you've held all your life. Like I went in the military, I was pretty patriotic, conservative Christian family. It takes a minute to digest. And I was reading about Islam a little bit. That's later on when I went to CSUSB. So yeah, I'd read books, and I'd actually before. So I've had intuitive knowledge when I was in. George Bush is a dipshit. He's our president. I don't respect him. The Army's kind of, it's funny, that and some other stuff. And then, so I can't imagine how people feel now, right? But, and then I started reading these books, and I'm like even more like just American history. And it takes, 5 years or so, just like little books and stuff. But this was the beginning when I went to the community college. But then I didn't identify with these guys in the class. I remember specifically, it was a RCC, Riverside Community College. And the teacher was pretty progressive, liberal, whatever you want to do that camp. And so he'd talk about guerrillas like the FARC in Colombia and stuff. And I didn't agree with that either. I was like, well, I'm not gonna like go from like super patriotic conservative to like supporting like armed revolutionaries around the world. I just wanted facts, more facts. I knew that obviously since high school I wasn't being given facts. So I was just trying to collect more facts. And then when I find people that I feel like have decent character and that I could trust their opinion, I go a little bit deeper. But otherwise, whatever people tell me, I try to divorce the facts from their bias, and then add the facts to other facts, and then take a step back and then look at the whole thing. And if I want to take someone's interpretation, I have to really, trust their character, their intellectual integrity, in order to start taking their interpretation as well. Otherwise, they're just giving me facts. I'm going to add to my other facts, and I'm going to try to make my own interpretation. So I went to Berkeley and did that probably 2002, 2003. So where does this HFC letter of employment come? I came back from Berkeley, quit from that East Bay Express job. So they were gutting the journalistic side. Right when I went in is when they got bought out. I was on the ad side, but I always wanted to write since I was a kid. So that was like my one thing, if you pick a career or something. But then I knew that I had to get life experience to write, because I wasn't going to just go to school to write. I tried that later on. I tried creative writing and poetry and stuff. But then, sure enough, it wasn't for me. But I felt like you just need to live. You just need to get out there, live, meet people, do stuff. And eventually the writing will come. So that's what I was doing. So when I was in there in the East Bay Express, I just, I would talk to the journalists a little bit, and I would pay attention to it. So when they started getting rid of people, and then they had at-will termination, so you get this company-wide email, so-and-so is no longer with us, any correspondence to him, please address it to so-and-so. They did that a couple times, and it kind of bugged me. It just seemed a little shady. So we would have beer and pizza Fridays, we would close out our ad book, and if we hit our numbers, everyone's happy and stuff. And so one of the beer and pizza Fridays, I walk into my boss's office, and I just have a Heineken in my hand, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? I'm going back home, Southern California, work with my folks. So I'm taking off. He's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm out of here. They're like, wait. And the guy was like freaking out. And I just thought it was hilarious, because I'm just holding a beer being like, all right, I'm peacing out. And he's like, wait. And so after, once or twice of like, no, we had big plans for you. We thought you're gonna be making 6 figures next year. I'm like, no, I'm okay. I'm going to make some money with my folks. And then he was like, well, at least let's get your leads, because, you have hundreds of advertising leads. I was doing decent. I wasn't the best, but, I was top 2 or 3 in there. And, they're like, at least let us go over your leads. And I was like, no, don't worry, I already gave them to so-and-so. so-and-so was a guy that they were about to fire. He was the worst guy on our sales team. And so as a little fuck you to them, I gave all my leads, all my hot leads, the people that was about to close, and also my current business, to the worst sales guy. So I had a little job security. But they did that day. They're like, what? And the guy's face dropped, and he immediately, like, from the beer and pizza Friday, it's like 5 or 6 o'clock, and we're already like a couple beers in. He ran over to that guy, and like they had to sit down, and he like undid what I just did, which is transfer all my leads to that guy. They really wanted that guy out. He wasn't closing anything. But I thought that was funny. And so that was my boss, the head of the ad department. But my direct manager, the supervisor of us, came over to me and he put his hand on my shoulder. Hey, Hondo, I remember Hondo. He might remember me. He put his hand on my shoulder and he whispered in my ear, he's like, "You're so bad." But he kind of smiled. He knew what was going on. It's like my heart wasn't in it, and I was leaving. I kind of felt like my boss was a dick. Hondo knew, even though Hondo was buddies with the guy, and so he kind of saw what I was doing. So I walked out of there, went back home, worked for my folks a little bit, was like, this isn't for me. Went to LA for a little bit, worked at Starbucks off of Venice Beach, lived off of Venice Beach. I would tell people, I was like, go to Venice Boulevard, take a left until you hit the beach. My house is the third house from the beach on the right. So I rented a house over there. No, I rented a room. I didn't have much money. I rented a little room in a house. It's probably crazy expensive now, but back then it was still affordable. You could get rooms for $500, $800. So working full time at Starbucks could do that. And then I moved to a loft where I had a $500 room right down from Staples Center. And you could still do that back then too. Downtown is a lot more expensive, but we're talking about like 2003. It was just starting to gentrify, so there were these lofts that were like 2,000, 3,000, and these huge complexes that were beautiful, like open, like beam construction, like warehouses basically, and you build out your rooms, and so there are like 4 or 5 rooms in there, so we're all paying $300 to $500 a piece. So did all that, every place. At one point, I think in like my 20s, I would tell people like I wouldn't stay anywhere for more than 3 months. So like all these things are happening like 3 months, 3 months, 3 months, like 3 months Papa John's after the army, then what else? I don't even remember, and I just said it. Then 3 months Berkeley, and then 3 months back at my folks, and 3 months LA. And so then a buddy of mine got out of the army, and so what was that, 2000 and, that's weird, that says 2004 HFC. I guess that was around then. But a buddy of mine got out of the army, and he was in Santa Cruz. That was my best friend from the army, the guy who stayed in that room with me. And I met him in basic training, and we had some bonding experiences. He got the drill sergeant medal, so the drill sergeants pick one soldier in their platoon, or what is it, their squad, or whatever the organization structure is. But one soldier gets their medal, the drill sergeant medal, and so he was a good soldier, and he went through Korea and ended up being stationed in Seoul. He was an attachment to the police over there. He got a suit budget. He just had to like hang out with the police, drink, and then in the morning write reports while he had a hangover about what they talked about. So super cush. So he was a cool dude. He always figured out how to get by. And he was a surfer from Santa Cruz. So I went up to visit him when I was in Starbucks in LA. And Santa Cruz was beautiful. And I remember distinctly, I was at the Mr. Toots coffee shop, and he was showing me around with his friends, and I was looking at the pier, at the ocean, and the colored little houses in Capitola across the way. I was just like, this place is beautiful. And then I've had these moments in my life where I'm just like, why aren't I here? I love Venice Beach, and I love LA, but I'm like, why aren't I here? And I was like, this is where I'm gonna write. And that's why, so I've stopped every now and then places being like, this is where I'm gonna write. This is where my first book is gonna come out. And I go there and I usually just live and don't write. But it's experience, you're growing. So I drove home, packed up my car, and I drove back that same day. I had a girl I had started seeing who was going to like one of the Cal State schools. Met her off of Craigslist, funny enough. And then Monet, her name was Monet. A really cute black girl who was she was trying to be a model, I think. And she made fun of me because I smoked cigarettes. No, I didn't talk to her anymore. Just stopped answering her text messages. I didn't even call in at Starbucks. Just packed up my stuff and drove right back. I told the guys, you mind if I come up? And he was like, no, the guys love you. They're in a house. A friend of his had a house. There were like 4 or 5 guys living there. Like, we were just talking about building rooms in the garage, and you can have one. I was like, perfect. Went up there, needed a job, and that's how I got HFC. And so HFC was in Salinas, and so I started, as soon as I got up there, that's what I noticed about life. I bounce around a lot, but I have a work ethic, and I'm independent. I'm not focusing it right now, and I've been on my focus before, but I think it's important to spend time with your family. But when the time comes, I need to make some money. I knew that I always can go, and I'm smart enough, and I've always believed in hard work. Like, that's another thing, is when you look at a kid who's not doing homework in high school or in school, you could say they're lazy, but if they show character, then it's something else. Like I busted my ass in wrestling. My friend dropped out, I didn't drop out. So I knew I could work hard, and I knew that from what I read and what type of person I wanted to be a hard worker. I wanted to be an adventurer. You know, you can't want to like visit countries, and you can't be a good soldier. Like, I was a good soldier. You can't be a good soldier and be lazy. I have a high bar for leadership, and when people tell me what to do, I take a step back and think if I should do it. And if I don't feel that I should do it, I just don't do it, and that has led me into issues, and I'm still balancing that. And that's where, like, now later on in life, being 36, I think a lot of that is ego. Sometimes it is independence and it's entrepreneurialness, but sometimes, like, I'm learning to lower the ego and to humble myself, and that's a lifelong path. So yeah, that's how I ended up at HFC. Now I'm at HFC, and I am selling. It's consumer lending. So we have leads, a database, and we just make calls all day, saying, okay, we have a credit card with you, but we also see that you have a house. You don't have a mortgage with us, or maybe they do have a first mortgage. Do you want a second? Do you want a home equity line of credit? And that type of thing. And little did I know that 4 years later we'd have a housing bubble, and I was playing an instrumental part in overextending America's credit. And that's just, it's one of the other little threads I tie through this narrative as I look through my life, is how the narrative of our country and of society runs through my life. It's cool. I was in the military, and then I watched the World Trade Center fall from the military barracks in 2001. I'm in there with a bunch of other soldiers, and someone hears it, and then they shout, and then everyone else runs down the hallway, because we're all still in IET, we're all in initial entry training, so we're not allowed to live on our own unless we're married. So we're all in the barracks while we're going to school, and so we're all like a bunch of soldiers who are like 18 to 20 for the most part, and we run down into our rec room where the TVs are. From like the hallway has all the little bedrooms, and then there's one room on each floor which has the TVs where you hang out in the rec room. So we all run into the rec room, and now there's like soldiers streaming in. So I'm in there when there's like 5, 10, and more coming in, and I watched the second tower fall. So the first had already fallen, and people were like, hey, and everyone's coming out. And this is right before formation. Maybe formation was like 7:30. I think that happened 6:30 West Coast time. So yeah, that was a cultural milestone for all of us, really, for our generation, maybe even for the 21st century. And then and then HFC was another one, at least for like the most recent boom and bust cycle. Consumer lending is a trip, and so I was just trying to make some money, and I did, and I had that job for a couple months, and again after a couple months I cycled on. But yeah, let's stay in Santa Cruz for a little.